Are you finding yourself asking the big questions in life? What's it all for? What's the point? What's my purpose? Are you feeling like your life is moving along and perhaps the hand of God is reaching out and ever so subtly nudging it in one direction or another? Do you have the sense that fate is intervening in your everyday experiences? If you're asking any of these questions, if you're feeling any of this way, know that it's right on time. We have a full moon coming through in Gemini this week, and this full moon signature is asking all of these questions. Hi, friends. I'm Emily Titomer of Emily T. Astrology, and I am a Hellenistic astrologer, former dancer, mother to three school-aged children, and your host for this, my inaugural episode of Hermes Speaks. This is your weekly astro check-in where we will take a look at the quality of the current time. And I will also be bringing in some added texture and color with some messages from Mercury offered through the written word. This week, we are looking at the full moon coming through in Gemini on December 4th. So let's get into it. The full moon in Gemini is perfecting at 13 degrees of Gemini, opposed the sun at 13 degrees of Sagittarius, as all full moons are oppositions between the moon and sun. And it's coming through at about 3:15 p.m. my time. I live on the west coast of California on December 4th. So check for your time zone when it might be perfecting. And the main aspect that this moon is making is a square to the lunar nodal axis. So the lunar nodes right now, depending on which measurement you use, either the mean or the true node, but either way, they're right around the middle degrees of Virgo and Pisces. The north node is right around 13 degrees of Pisces, and the south node right around 13 degrees of Virgo right now. So if you've been listening, you heard 13 several times there. This is a pretty close square that the moon is making to the nodal axis. They're the same degree, 13 degrees. And what does this mean? Well, the lunar nodes are connected to the moon, the lunar nodes. They speak very much of shifts in fortune, things that come into and out of our lives that we sometimes feel a little bit as though we don't have a lot of agency around them. The lunar nodes is how we discover when our eclipse seasons will happen, when we have a new or a full moon in which the sun is close enough to either the north or south node, then we have an eclipse. So, what does this mean? If we are having a full moon now this week at 13 degrees of Gemini, almost exactly square the nodal axis, that means that we are right smack in the middle of eclipse season. We had two eclipses along the Virgo and Pisces axis that took place in September of this year. We'll have eclipses again in about 3 months. The first in the Aquarius Leo axis, but then another along the Virgo and Pisces axis in March of 2026. So we are right in the middle of eclipse seasons. In particular, the eclipse that took place on September 7th of this year was at 15 degrees of Pisces, a lunar full moon eclipse. And the eclipse that's taking place on March 3rd of next year, 2026, is at 12 degrees of Virgo, another lunar full moon eclipse. Are you listening to these numbers? We had a 15 degrees full moon eclipse. We will have a 12-degree full moon eclipse. And right now we are having a 13-degree full moon along the mutable axis. All of these signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, all of our mutable or double-bodied signs. So all of this essentially says we are in the midst of turning points of fate. This is why I asked those questions at the beginning of the episode here. Are you feeling like perhaps there are subtle nudges that are shifting your life in new directions or away from things that have long been important to you? Now, full moons always, every month, will bring up heightened sensitivities, heightened emotions. It is a time when the moon is fully illuminated that we sometimes begin to have an upswelling of our feelings, our memories, our psychic patterning that is normally maybe in the darker recesses or the shadows of our psychology. Well, full moons often bring these things up. So, full moons always can feel a little bit chaotic or a little bit overwhelming in terms of energy and emotion. When we're looking at a full moon that's taking place in a mutable sign, all the mutable signs, because they come at the end of the seasons along the solar year, all the mutable signs have a tendency to feeling a little bit chaotic. They're multivalent, they're multifaceted. There's not a lot of grounded energy in the mutable signs. Full moons in general don't feel especially grounded. So we have those two aspects of this full moon. It's a full moon, and it's in Gemini, a mutable sign, that are adding to the sense of overwhelm, of a little bit of chaos, of a little bit of multivalence, right? And then we bring in the fact that this is right in the middle of eclipse seasons. This is very closely square the actual lunar nodes. This feels like a full moon in which we are feeling like maybe there is something to this whole fate versus free will question. Maybe there are karmic aspects of our lives. And sometimes that can throw us these questions, these sensations that we maybe are not in total control of our lives can throw us into the existential place of then asking these questions of what is it all for? What's the point? What's the meaning of life? And the full moon in Gemini, opposed to the sun in Sagittarius, just adds to all of this even more. What are we looking at here? Gemini is a sign that is ruled by Mercury. Sagittarius, where our sun is ruled by Jupiter. If we're looking at the Virgo and Pisces axis along which our nodes are falling right now, Virgo is a sign that is ruled by Mercury, and Pisces is a sign that in traditional Hellenistic astrology, which is what I practice, is ruled by Jupiter. So we're looking at all of the signs that are associated with Mercury and Jupiter, in particular Gemini and Sagittarius. Gemini is a sign that's all about wit. Sagittarius is a sign that's all about wisdom. We're looking at wit, wisdom, information, inspiration, fact with Gemini, faith with Sagittarius. The inherent push and pull along this axis of Gemini and Sagittarius is already laden with these questions of fate versus free will, information versus inspiration, faith versus fact, right? So we are already in the time of year when we have a full moon in Gemini, as we do every year, where we are asking these questions. What is fact? What is faith? What do I need to trust in? What do I need to know? Right? And so this full moon, square to the nodes, along the mutable axis, full of Mercurial and Jupiterian questions and full of the questions of fate, free will, and a little bit of existentialism, right? So now here is the part of the show where we get to, as I promised, those messages from Mercury offered through the written word. Over the last, I don't know, 6 to 9 months, have been employing bibliomancy to add to my astrological practice. If you are not familiar with bibliomancy, it is another divinatory art, just in the same way that approaching the tarot or the I Ching or oracle cards, any of your divinatory practices, and I believe that astrology is a divinatory practice as well. Any of these divinatory practice can add to your relationship with the oracle. And how bibliomancy works is that you ponder a question or meditate on a transit, in this case, the full moon in Gemini, and you take a book. I imagine that this began with the Bible, the book, right? But it can be any book. You take a book, you ponder that question, or you meditate on that concept, and then you open the book at random to see what messages Spirit wants to add, or the Oracle wants to add, or how the Oracle wants to help answer that question. And the reason that I use bibliomancy is because I love words. I love words. I love reading. I love writing. I have Gemini on my IC at the bottom of my chart. Words and messages and communication are part of how I feel grounded and rooted in this life. And I should say that Mercury, Hermes, is the planet of communication, of the written word, of messages. And so I've really been employing bibliomancy over the last 6, 9 months or so, and it has added tremendously to my astrological practice. And so I really wanted to bring this in here for you. And I decided to, just ponder the full moon, see what message Spirit or the Oracle or Mercury wanted to give me around the full moon. And I decided to pull from this book of poems. It's called And Yet by Kate Baer. She's a fantastic poet, by the way. And this is the poem that I opened the book at random to. It is called Summing It Up. We were born in June, even if it was actually December. God said, stand up and try. And even if we couldn't stand, our mothers carried us. We lived, if we lived. We died, if we died. What is the point? Everyone asked. Since the beginning, since the very beginning of time. I mean, how appropriate, right? That sums it all up. That sums up this full moon in Gemini. And if we think about it, even that title, summing it up, speaks to the axis of Gemini and Sagittarius. The sum is very Jupiterian, the cohesion, the unification, all of it together. The parts are very mercurial, very Gemini, all the different pieces of information. And I think this poem speaks to those existential questions. What is the point? And what I'm really getting out of it is that it doesn't really matter. What matters is that we live, that we experience. As I said, I live on the west coast of California. All my life, I've lived within a 1 to 2 hour drive of an ocean. I, when I go out to the ocean and stand in front of the water, particularly the Pacific Ocean, it just feels huge. And there's a sense of total insignificance, right? That each of us are as small and insignificant as one of those grains of sand. And simultaneously, at the same moment, I am a part of it all. I am connected to it all. I am a part of the multifaceted, multivalent, very mutable signs, everything, right? We are all nothing and everything. And God may ask us to stand up, and we might try to stand up. And even if we can't stand up, somehow we are carried. Our great mother carries us. And we move through life. We live and we die. And we don't know what the point is. But something about this full moon, square to the nodes, is asking us to just keep asking. I think that's the point. That's the point that I'm getting. The point is to keep asking the question, to keep asking, what is it for? To keep seeking the answers for meaning, for purpose, right? And so that's what I encourage you to do with this full moon in Gemini time period. I encourage you to just keep asking the question. And know, this is so Sagittarian, right? Know that it doesn't really matter. It's not about the end point, it's about the journey. It's about looking at all of the parts and then at some point recognizing that maybe the sum of it all is greater than any of the individual parts. And it's about the questions that you keep asking. So I hope that this was fun. I'm a bit grandiose and hyperbolic. I recognize that about myself. But I hope this was useful. I hope that as you move through this full moon and into the next few weeks, you find yourself enlivened with the big questions in life. And even if you veer toward nihilism, even if you veer towards, I don't know what the point of any of it is, just remember that it's in the seeking of the answers that we really can find meaning and purpose. So if you enjoyed this, please do give me a like, give me a subscribe. I came to astrology a few years ago after a period of time that felt like a drought. Like I had a drought of meaning and spiritual purpose in my life. And astrology really was the first thing in a while that imbued me with that sense of meaning and purpose. I love it so much. If you can't tell, I'm a Sagittarius sun, and my birthday is coming up. And, last year on my birthday, I was moving into a 10th house year. If you know much about astrology, you know that that's a time of year that is focused on career and visibility. And I set a goal for myself to meet with a certain number of clients. And, 10 months in, I gratefully and delightfully met and surpassed that goal. I can't tell you how grateful I am. I love meeting with my clients. I feel so aligned when I'm in that space. And so, as a thank you to my clients, with such deep gratitude for the experience of this last year, I am offering a special rate for readings through December 7th of this year. So if you're watching this before then and you've been wanting to get a year-end reading or any kind of reading, come see me. The link for that will be in the description of this video. I think I'll also pin it to the comments as well. If you have been wanting to have a one-on-one consultation with an astrologer, I'm your gal. Come see me. In addition to that, I am collaborating with a client turned colleague and friend, Megan McDonough of Magnetize Your Light, and we are offering together a workshop on the siren call of Neptune. I'm also a pretty Neptunian person. And we're going to be diving into Neptune in your chart. If you were interested in that, I will also include the link in the description of this video. It's taking place on December 16th at 5:30 Pacific online. So come and see me. Come learn all about Neptune with me. It's the perfect time of year as Neptune is finishing its stint in Pisces, where it has been for almost, 14 years. All in all, just keep asking the questions. I'll be back next week with some horoscopes for all 12 signs. We're going to be looking at the final opposition between Mercury and Scorpio and Uranus and Taurus, and I'll be pulling some bibliomancy for each sign. So come on and join me next week. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, being here today, and keep seeking the answers to life's big questions. I'll see you next week.